on Facebook, really gets that social interaction around your content. Something that's often really overlooked is video. We've done a lot of illustrated action video where you're taking the information that's in an infographic or in a blog post and illustrating it and walking through that for the end user. The example here is just a screenshot from a piece that we did. It's basically called kinetic typography. It's watching the words and watching the images appear in the video on the YouTube channel. And some of these videos that we've done for clients have gotten 20,000, 30,000 views, and YouTube is also the second most popular search engine in the world. So if you're putting together a content strategy, make sure you include video. Micro video, Instagram and Vine. When you're talking about millennials or the teenage market, Generation Z, I believe people are calling it, teens and college students process video information in a 13-second, 16-second time frame. So taking snippets from the video or vignettes that you do for YouTube and sharing them on your Instagram channel, on your Vine channel, and even on Facebook really gets engagement around that content. And the bonus here is that if you're putting together design for an infographic, basically by sharing it in multiple formats, you have a consolidated design effort. You should be able to build video, infographics, infograms, Twitter cards, everything else, all through one design. So the content ideation process is pretty much the most important component of all of this. It's more so, as Brent said, there's a lot of low quality stuff out there. But if you're taking the time and investing in a content marketing campaign, really take the time to strategize. What are the SEO targets? What are the keywords that you're going after? And also the semantic modifiers. So, for example, if you're Starbucks and you're trying to rank for coffee pods or something like that, what else are people calling them? Are they calling them K-cups? Are they calling them pods? Are they calling them instant coffee? Whatever it may be, and integrate that into the piece, because basically, if you can integrate more of that information in those terms, when people are writing about that piece and linking back to you, they're going to use that in the text. And a link is incredibly important, but a link that appears within relevant content is more important, really. So think about those SEO modifiers and keyword buckets and terminology you want to use inside the piece itself. Outreach targets. If you're working on this for your own company or for a client, really look at the publishers that your companies or your clients personas visit. Who are the publishers that 17 to 24 year-old high school graduates, soon to enter college females are reading, right? Those are the most important blogs that you're going to want to target from an outreach perspective. And while you're strategizing this and while you're developing the design, you can be tweeting or retweeting those influencers, engaging with those influencers, which really makes the outreach component a little bit easier when it's time to start emailing, asking for favors. Social sharing. So, there's a really great tool that I utilize called Shared Count. It's shared with an ED and an account. And with Shared Count, what you can do is you can pull URLs from blog posts, not only on your own blog, but on the blogs of maybe other businesses in your field. And you can bulk upload them to Shared Count, and what they'll do is they'll report on which posts and which content get the most engagement. And that is a great metric, and it's great data to have, because if you can identify the content that's being put out there in your niche and what people are engaging with, you can integrate that form of content or that storytelling into your overall strategy, and there's a higher chance that not only will it get picked up by some of the blogs out there in your field, but also that people will share that as well. Social influencers, like I said before with outreach targets, who's not only writing about this kind of stuff on their blogs, but there are also YouTube stars, Twitter celebrities, multiple other influencers that don't blog, that will share this content and will get traffic back to you or your client. Ad enhancement. Look into the types of advertising and pre-plan this with your paid media strategist or director or whatever, or if you're doing it yourself, pre-plan this. Get ready to do a Facebook boost. If something blows up, get ready to promote it on StumbleUpon and Reddit and Twitter and multiple other social channels that have advertising. If you see that something's working well organically, you can amplify that tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold via an ad campaign. And also content lifespan. Typically when an infographic or a piece of content is produced, it goes hot for like a 2-month period. But ideally, and we'll get to this in the case study at the end of the webinar, that piece of content should bring residual traffic and engagement and users for a long time. So really think about the lifespan of that content and how you might be able to add to that piece in the future. So, you know, before you embark on a content strategy, you really want to build your content nucleus on your site. If your business site does not currently have a weblog or a blog, start there. Or maybe you have a resource center, or maybe you have an article center. Make sure that that is built out. You have social buttons, you have ways for people to share and engage on that, because ideally you do not want to distribute an infographic that links back to your money page, so to speak. You want to distribute a piece of content that links back to a resource page on your site where folks can sign up for your email newsletter, they can comment, they can share socially from there. And then from a linking perspective, what you really want to do is link from that blog post over to your money page then, because you're still sending that equity, authority, trust, and link juice to the money page. It's just one extra step, and that extra step can build the brand advocates that are really going to talk about your brand across the board. Also, infographic image files are great for syndication, and if you are basically, there is a WordPress plugin called Lightbox where if a user clicks on the infographic image, they don't get taken to an image file page to look at it. It expands on the site. And this is really important because one thing I've seen is that if websites do not have a Lightbox or some way to expand or zoom into the image on the site, people will link to the image file itself. And linking to that image file doesn't necessarily help you as much from an SEO perspective. And if you have the ability to do so, HTML5 content is a great way to get content that's really nice from an aesthetic standpoint and has indexable text. So QuickSprout is Neil Patel's blog, and he has a lot of HTML5 infographics where if you kind of scroll over the infographic or look at the source or look at the Google cache, you'll see that that infographic actually has text that's it's viewable by Googlebot, right, and indexable. And that's also, if you can't do HTML5, or you don't have the budget to do it, that's why it's important to have the infographic and the blog post all on the same page. So when you are putting your content out there, right, and say you've developed your infographic, you're ready to go, really you want to start working with publishers. Sometimes you might want to even work with a publisher before the piece is created. So emailing the publishers, asking them questions is a great way to really get that content, in front of them even before you publish it. And PR, there's a thing called an embargo where you actually send your press release out to influential publishers before the press release is distributed. It gives bloggers and journalists time to review that content, to write a great post, and it's a way to, again, build trust. So target publishers that are out there and also converse with them and engage with them on Twitter and send your content to them beforehand. One thing that we've done for a travel client that's based in Canada is that we did research on the top 20 Canadian travel bloggers and emailed those travel bloggers introducing ourselves, letting them know what we were doing, that we were putting together an infographic on tips for places to go in in Cancun or outside of Cancun that might be family friendly, and we asked them, hey, bloggers, what are some tips that you have or some things that you've learned or written about in the past about Cancun from a family-friendly perspective? And I'd say about 60% of them wrote back with their own tips. So what we did is we put those quotes in the infographic itself and in the blog post. So when it was published, we reached back out to them and said, hey, look, we featured you here. And the bulk of those bloggers not only linked to that from their own blog, but they also shared it within their social channels. So really engaging and working with publishers is very important. And then also, once you get your infographic out there, there are a lot of like low-hanging fruit and sites like SlideShare, Visually, Imgur, and Pinterest, where you can upload the infographics, get instant links. Visually will link back to you. And also, these are the resources that bloggers and publishers go to find great content to then embed on their blogs. I've seen infographics and visuals that have been put on Visually get picked up. You can track this because Visually uses their own embed code, get picked up 6 months after the fact, a year after the fact. And then SlideShare and Visually and even Imgur will feature great content on their homepage. So sometimes you can get something that you've done, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation or whether it's an infographic featured on those homepages. I think Brent recently, you had something featured on SlideShare's homepage, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a presentation of mine actually that was recently shared and on there. They actually shared it 3 times. I was pretty stoked.
And then there are 2 sites that I really love. First is Infographic Journal, which is kind of funny because it almost sounds like it would be a sister site to Search Engine Journal. Infographic Journal publishes some of the best infographics on the web on a daily basis. And I've seen some of the infographics that we've done and gotten featured on Infographic Journal go viral on their own. So one infographic that I submitted to Infographic Journal and it published got over 5,000 stumbles, and that really helped not only Infographic Journal, of course, but drove traffic to the client. And another one is Design Taxi, which is almost a hidden gem. I probably shouldn't even be sharing this, but Design Taxi is a site that highlights great design, and they have an infographic channel on their site where typically if you get, we recently had, well, what you saw earlier, the CNET example, recently had an infographic that was submitted and published on Design Taxi, and it just went hot and viral afterwards. A CNET writer saw it, picked it up, and then it got hot and viral again. So Design Taxi is a great one that you should really have in your wheelhouse when syndicating and promoting infographics. And now we're going to have a poll. So,
all right. So our very first poll question is going to be, let me go ahead and launch it so you can read and respond. How do you distribute your content for link acquisition? So we've been talking about a lot of different ways that you can distribute your content and different types of content. So how do you actually distribute your content right now for link acquisition? First option, guest blogging, embedding graphics, distributing to infographic sites, social media sharing on my branded channels, all of the above, or I don't share content to acquire links. So we're going to give everybody a couple minutes to give their answers. Would really like you to take a moment and give your feedback. It'd be great to get everybody's view. Got about half the people voting. Give a couple more minutes. You can do it. Just pick one. All right, I'm going to close it in a couple seconds. And all right, let's go ahead and share the results real quick so we can see as well. So it looks like a lot of people do social media sharing on their branded channels. And there's a chunk of you out there who do absolutely no sharing for acquiring links at all. And hopefully that group of people definitely are going to pick that up after this presentation. So we'll go ahead and let Lauren jump back into his presentation.
Yeah, this is really interesting results because sometimes social media channels can get overlooked, And one tip too, if you're sharing your content on your Twitter account or your Facebook account, you don't only have to do it once. You can do it multiple times over the course of a week or the course of forever. Sharing content in different ways, having different calls to action, different messaging around it. So that's really great to hear. And we're going to get into different forms of syndication next.
Yeah, the only thing I would say with that is just like, you know, understand how often you can. Some people overdo that, right? They go onto Facebook and they put it every 2 hours, you know. I mean, certain places like Twitter and Pinterest have a burn rate of like 10 to, 30 seconds. So you can literally do it every other day.
True. So again, just like a lot of you filled out in the poll, social media is a great way to distribute content. Facebook and Instagram are really where the masses are. They share that content, they link that content, they comment on that content, they regram that content. And even though Instagram does not have a link in your update field, you can share something on your Instagram account and then link on your profile to that landing page. So sometimes what I'll do is share a snap of the content and be like, hey, if you want to see the whole thing, follow the link in the profile and use a tracking URL, and that typically, like Bitly or something, that typically brings traffic. Also, if you're sharing on Facebook, make sure that you do not upload a photo and then write a description and have a link and then share it, because when you do that, your site doesn't absorb those citations, so you won't see the number of Facebook likes or shares on your, say, blog posts in the same fashion that you do on your Facebook account. So actually share that in traditional setting. You can just paste your link into your Facebook stream, and then if you have your Open Graph tags done correctly, that content piece should appear automatically, or you can upload a photo from there. Google Plus is really cool because if you just share a photo with a link or share a link, all of those signals get attributed back to the site. Flickr is really Yahoo's sleeping giant. A lot of folks don't talk about Flickr as much anymore, but it's still one of the most popular visual destinations out there, and it's not just about photos. You can basically upload anything to Flickr. If you're sharing content and Twitter is important for you, make sure that you have Twitter cards assigned for each of those posts. If you have a WordPress blog and you use Yoast SEO for WordPress plugin, you can designate the Twitter card in while you're doing the post, and the Twitter card basically just puts an image as part of your Twitter update. If you have video, you can designate what's called a play card on Twitter that shows up on mobile devices where someone can watch the video directly from Twitter. So if you use WordPress and SEO for WordPress, check out the ability to add Twitter cards to your blog posts, because those images boost engagement. And also Tumblr. If something goes hot on Tumblr and it starts to be reblogged, those reblogs are basically considered links. I've had content goes super hot on Tumblr. Some of the links are followed, some of them are no followed, but at the end of the day, a link means traffic generation, right? So it doesn't matter if it's no followed or not. So don't forget Tumblr, don't forget Flickr. Make the most out of Twitter and Facebook via Twitter card and Open Graph tagging, and especially if you're B2B, try Google Plus as well. Again,
interesting note on Flickr that a lot of people don't know is that it's not just about your own accounts. Flickr actually has groups. So they have really large infographic groups that have 10, 20,000 people subscribed to them. So there's a lot of opportunity in Flickr still, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said before, YouTube, Vine, and Instagram. Don't forget those, especially Vine and Instagram if you have branded channels set up. If you don't have branded channels set up, go do that right after this presentation. And also, you can upload video directly to Facebook. I don't know if there's any data on whether or not Facebook directly uploaded videos get more shares than YouTube videos that are shared on Facebook, but it's definitely an opportunity, and Facebook reports on all of those metrics in Facebook Insights. So don't forget Facebook video, YouTube, Vine, and Instagram. So we've talked a lot about syndicating to third-party sites, sharing content via your social media channels, but don't forget your customer at the end of the day, especially if you're in the e-commerce field. One of the most overlooked channels that I see folks not sharing their content in is email. Almost any e-commerce site, almost any publisher has a curated email list. If you are an e-commerce site, if you're an online store, and say, for example, your customer buys a grill online, gets it delivered to their house, why not send out a guide to grilling with cool recipes for the summertime 5 days after they order that, or maybe 5 days after the confirmed delivery is set up? Like, implementing content into your email strategy is sound. And another thing too is that there are a lot of industry bloggers and influencers that are on your on your email list, right? So if you're Zappos, if you're Amazon, if you're LaurenSunglasses.com, you should have a email list that you send content out to on a regular basis, and those are your loyal customers at the end of the day. That's one thing that you really have to remember. That's the benefit of sharing on social media and in email, is that your fans or your list or your audience is going to be your best brand advocate. And then also, if they are sharing your content, that's even stronger than you sharing it, because it's a third party saying that, hey, your brand or your site is awesome. It's social proof at the end of the day. So don't forget email. Really look into your email list. At Search Engine Journal, we send out our Friday wrap-up and different event and sponsored emails, and we're always featuring some of the best content on the site. We get a lot of engagement, and it's really become important across the board. So whether you're a publisher or you're a store, don't forget email. Again, social media, they're your brand advocates. Press releases. If you have press releases planned to go out in the next quarter, the next 6 months, or maybe tomorrow, don't line up content or line up an infographic or an infogram with that press release. On PR Web, you have the ability to upload upload image files to the press release. What better way to make that press release more special and kind of stand out from the rest than have an infographic attached to it that describes what you're trying to get across, an infographic or a video. So don't forget press releases. And also, one thing I mentioned earlier was ad retargeting. So if you have traffic that's coming to your site to view an infographic or a story, that traffic is going to engage, or they're going to leave your site, right? But if you put together a retargeting or remarketing campaign that can follow that user around once they leave your site with similar messaging, similar images, similar storyline, make that part of your campaign as well. Of course, Google is a great place to start, but there's networks like AdRoll and Meteora that have multiple different retargeting options. So look into those and making sure that that's part of your overall campaign as well, especially if you're already doing advertising. So you've put together an infographic, you've put together a blog post. This webinar is a great example. We're going to be taking this webinar and putting it into a YouTube video, and we're going to be putting it on SlideShare, right? That's all great, but really the key is consolidating all that content into one page on your site. You want to have the best page ever with the best content ever around the keywords that you're targeting from an SEO perspective, and having that all on your site really empowers the visitor to share that content appropriately. So if you're doing a blog post, put your infographic on there, put links to your ebooks on there, embed your video, embed tweets that people have shared talking about your content in your blog post. Maybe even embed an Instagram image in your blog post. Put it all together, because really at the end of the day, that makes that blog post or that page so valuable to almost any user who uses Instagram or uses Facebook or uses YouTube. And we've done this with our webinar recaps on Search Engine Journal, and one thing we definitely see is that when you embed a SlideShare presentation on the blog post and a YouTube video on the blog post and get traffic to that blog post, people stay on your site longer. They watch the video. They go through the SlideShare presentation. And for each video view that's on your blog post, that's a new video view. It's counted on YouTube. For each SlideShare presentation that a user sees on your blog post, that ups your view count on SlideShare. So it makes you and your content more important on those channels. So as Brent was saying, one of his presentations was featured on the SlideShare homepage 3 times. One way to really kind of kick that off and get it going is to embed that on your blog post, drive traffic to your blog post, get people interacting on it, and that will build up your channels across the board and gives a centralized hub on your blog post or page for people to visit and leave comments.
It's especially good if you're in like current events type stuff, right? Because people are only going to share, like news industry is great, right? You're only going to share one news story. So getting something, that's why a lot of news agencies do these, kind of living posts where they have all the stuff embedded on one page because they want to be a little bit better than their competition. And this allows you to do that and allows you to become the source for the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Bleacher Report and Sports does a very good job of that because they'll actually find tweets that are done by some of the head journalists at ESPN or CBS and put it on their site. So they have information from someone like Adam Schefter talking about an NFL signing, but they're just embedding the Twitter update and writing about it. And we even do that on SEJ. Like yesterday, we published a post basically about mobile get-in, like Google updating their own mobile ranking algorithm. And what we did was we wrote about it, but then we wanted to get current information on there. So we embedded tweets from folks like Dr. Pete and some other influencers in SEO on the post itself. And not only is that great to kind of get content on your blog post, but that's a great way to like kind of get in front of influencers again and say thank you. And when people see that, chances are they're going to share your blog post more because their face is on it. All right, so that's a lot of theory and how-tos, but what I really wanted to do is kind of go through a living, breathing case study to show the value of pre-planning a content marketing campaign, utilizing different types of content, syndicating it to influencers, and also promoting it through your own email and social channels. Unfortunately, I can't share the company this is done for, but I can share a lot of information about it. So the company is a retailer, and one of their biggest goals as a whole for our company for 2015 is to position themselves as being the source of jeans and denim to the high school and college market. So what we did is we looked at different trends that their customers were doing and writing about, what their customers were sharing out there, what was popular on blogs and YouTube, and we put together an infographic and content campaign on how to distress your jeans, which is basically how to put holes in your jeans and make them look special. So what we did is we put together a very in-depth and long blog post about this from a written content perspective. And this blog post is much more in-depth than anything that their competition has been doing. Secondly, we put together a very well-designed infographic with how-tos on distressing denim and do-it-yourself tips. The infographic is not very promotional of their brand, but there's subtle product placement within the infographic. So a lot of the images, a lot of the jeans that are being cut up and putting holes in them are the jeans from that company. Because one thing that you really want to do at the end of the day, if you're doing this for yourself or if you're doing this for a client, is don't turn your content campaign into advertorial, because then it won't be shared naturally. Do subtle branding, subtle product placement. So that's what we did for this. Then we took some of the main points from the infographic and kind of cut them into infograms. So little cards that can be shared on their own social channels to really mobilize their social accounts. And the client has millions of Facebook fans, so we really wanted to tap into that. And then also put together material for them to send out to their email newsletter. So here's just an example. Here's a snapshot of the infographic with some of the tips on, distressing your genes and tools you can use and everything else. So as you see, it was an infographic that had subtle branding and then had really nice kind of how-to illustrations on top of that. And then from there, what we did is, like I said, we put together infograms for them to share on social media. And what was really cool was that not only did they get a lot of likes and comments from their social media campaign and their shares on Facebook, but a lot of shares themselves. So their customers were sharing this information to their customers' own audience. And that was really great. We were very happy about that. It also, when you promote via social media, it drives engaged users back to your site. Social signals as a whole, like numbers of tweets or numbers of likes, don't really help from an SEO perspective as much, but driving a targeted user to the site who then stays on the site longer, shows a better bounce rate, engages on the site, clicks around on the site, helps from an SEO perspective. So that's something really to keep in mind. We put together outreach targets looking at fashion influencers, and not just fashion influencers, but college-style influencers. So there are a number of fashion sites that write specifically for college students. There are also a number of denim loyalists, blogs and writers and bloggers that just write about jeans and denim. So we put all of these together from an outreach target perspective. And also different fashion sites and news sites that have covered and written about the client in the past. We really wanted to reach out to journalists and bloggers that have written about this company before and show them what this new initiative was. And then also influencers who have written about their competitors in the past too. If you're putting together better content than your competitors, make sure that you get that content in front of people that have written about them. So the result of the campaign, we had over 10,000 Facebook likes. And again, likes mean it shows up in social streams, it drives traffic, and everything else, and that's phenomenal. 450 plus Facebook shares. So people are actually sharing that content out to their own audiences, and that's great too. 2,500 other tweets or pins from other social sites. We only had 25 to 28 links come through directly from influencers and bloggers, but those links were high trusted links. Majestic SEO, actually they've rebranded to majestic.com, they have a metric signal called TrustFlow that really mimics Google's trustworthiness metric that they utilize in the algorithm. And getting links from sites that have high trust flow really helps from a ranking perspective. We also saw that we had a lot of co-citation links. Co-citation links are basically links that point to blog posts or articles that link to you. So the good thing about seeing co-citation in the link map is that means it's basically social proof saying that the influencers that wrote about the client and linked to the client's content and shared that content got their own links, which at the end of the day really helps from a SEO perspective. And one of the most important things, if you remember when I was going over the goals, is to dominate the SERPs for these kinds of queries. The client gets 30,000 plus referrals per month from organic search back to that page that we put all of the content together on. And what this means is they get a lot of traffic and residual linking benefit in the long run. People are finding that content and still sharing it and still linking to it after the fact. And that is probably the most powerful way to judge the successfulness of a content marketing campaign is seeing that it takes on a life of its own, and it's living and breathing and growing even when you're not trying to get shares. So basically, when pulling an SEMrush data for that blog post that had all this content on it, we see that the client is ranking in the top 10 for multiple terms that they really wanted to dominate, and this helps position them as being a leader in this space. So thank you very much for watching this webinar and going through this presentation. You can connect with me on Twitter at Lauren Baker. And since I have such a unique name, I'm also Lauren Baker on LinkedIn and Google+. So please take the time to connect. And now we're going to get into Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lauren. I think that, you know, as I've said a couple times, I mean, there's so much information in there and so much beneficial information in there. Even my second time going through, I've got 3 notes down here, so, you know, of actionable items. So, I mean, I thought it was really, really informative. We have quite a few questions that kind of range across the board. Before we get into questions, the one thing I just wanted to emphasize was I thought it was really good on that last slide that you had where it showed the results. I think a lot of people, when they look at social media, they ask the question, well, how do I know if this is working for me? How do I know if this is benefiting me? And so often people look at just one element. You know, they're very, you know, because it fits into whatever their wheelhouse is, right? So if I'm an SEO, I want links, right? And they really discredit a lot of the other elements there. And I think that, you know, what you show is a very healthy campaign there. Co-citation, links, signals, traffic, conversation, branding, like all of those elements together, I think is really, you know, a powerful thing. And so I think that was a really great case study.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Jumping into some of the questions, some of them are very quick and some of them are long. So let's just kind of go right down the list. Is it good to have multiple backlinks from the same domain?
You know, it's not good necessarily if a lot of those backlinks have the same anchor text or they're being placed in an effort to boost links. I will take multiple backlinks from Huffington Post or ABC News or CNET any day of the week. So what I would say is that it is good if those links are multiple but possibly linking to other parts of your site, other blog posts, or new content, right? So if someone has written about you in the past, make sure that you connect with them in the future and get those links. I'll take multiple links from an important site any day of the week.
So this is this next question is kind of one that you get a lot, and I get a lot as well. Is okay, I'm going to build this company. What would be my first 3 links, right? So this individual is asking specifically. Tiago Santana is asking, if I was to build one for a car dealership, what would be the first 3 links that you would get?
One moment. The first 3 links I would do for a car dealership is first, if you're a localized company, look for local business directories, chambers of commerce, news-oriented sites, get listed there. Chamber of Commerce pages are incredibly valuable because they have great link portfolios, and try to get a link there. Maybe secondly, I would, directories still make a lot of sense, right? So there's a directory called Best of the Web, BOTW.org. And not only is it one of the oldest web directories out there, but it's also managed and moderated by a team, right? So they're actually checking the submittals and making sure it's the best sites listed. So try Best of the Web. And
what I like about Best of the Web is that even though I know those guys very, very well, like I don't get any special treatment. Like I've had links like totally denied when I tried to get them in there, and they were like, come on, guys. So yeah, I am a big fan of Best of the Web.
And then like try to find some of the most relevant blogs out there about your niche. So if you're an auto dealer, there are a lot of blogs that write about you know, auto paint and car safety and things like that, and see if you can contribute content to those blogs from a guest blogging perspective. That's where I would start with.
So I want to jump in here and answer a little bit as well, because I think when you ask a question like that, it's kind of an early question to ask. I mean, it's possible that it's just to pick your brain a little bit, but it does warrant saying that a lot of efforts that you might find out there to get links have consequences to them. So you really need to be careful about where you're getting your links. Some people will try to go out and guest blog, or some people will go out to directories and, oh, I'm not going to do best of the web, but I'm going to go grab a different directory. Those other directories might not be the same quality. You might get hurt by some of those links. So definitely be cautious. I would say the best 3 links you can get are the ones that you can get right off the bat. So if you have friends, if you have opportunities from some of your social accounts, from your social profiles, these might not have a huge weight as far as an SEO authority, but they do have an indexing and a categorization effect, which can be very helpful to you as you start getting some of those other links. So think about what natural links you can get out there and get those first.
I agree.
Jumping into the next question. Give me one second. What digital assets, infographics, white papers, product brochures, videos, is better aligned with each stage of the buying process as it relates to B2B?
Really, infographics, white papers, and ebooks basically perform the best from a B2B perspective. Ebooks and white papers are something that are very common in B2B, and also you can advertise them on Facebook or LinkedIn, for example, drive those leads, and then have an email sign-up gate to then get the person to download the ebook and to get them on your list. Once they're on your list, you can then revisit through marketing automation, or just like sending an email newsletter with different information around the theme of that ebook. So for example, if someone downloads an ebook on content marketing or an ebook on link building and signs up to a list from there, I know that that person wants to start link building, or they want to start content marketing, or they want to start a campaign around that. Then I can subtly sell to them through emails and even Facebook ads, because they've already designated that they're interested in the subject matter, and they could be a very strong customer. So I would say, try to put together an ebook or a white paper behind a lead gate, or have a benefit, like if you sign up for a newsletter, you'll get a free ebook on social media management. Then you know that that person's highly targeted and on your list, and how to market to them in the future.
Now, he brings up B2B and kind of what phase in the process. Do you think that, this is just an add-on question to that, do you think that there's certain elements to the material that come into play as in where you are in that process? For instance, like if you're going to give somebody a 3-minute video and they don't really know your brand, that's going to be really hard for the average user to get through. And so you might position a video being later in the process once you've already gotten some intrigue or some interest in the product. Do you think it makes a difference in when you actually deliver these things, or how deep the content is when you deliver it the first time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, basically, from a lead perspective, if you get a lead and you don't contact that lead within 5 minutes, you've basically lost them, right? I think the same thing pretty much applies to the web. If you have say a landing page with a sales letter type format and multiple different tips and multiple different videos for someone to watch, and then like a sign-up form as they scroll down the page, you basically know that that person has read about your service, or they have read about what you offer. You can see whether or not, if they've watched a video, if they've scrolled all the way down, if they've taken the time and stayed on your site for 5 minutes to go through that process, and they haven't bought, chances are they're going to buy in the future because they have invested that time. And that's where you can hit them with retargeting content or sending a newsletter or something similar.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the answers. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for some of the Q&A. Lauren, are you going to be around to continue doing this through Twitter a little bit, or what's your schedule like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we can answer some of the questions via Twitter, and what we'll also do is we'll put together a webinar recap on SEJ in the next upcoming days, and if there's any specific questions that need to be answered, we can address those in the recap itself.
So what we'll do is we'll get the rest of these questions over to Lauren. Continue please asking the questions. Again, the hashtag is SCJ Think Tank. You can continue to ask questions. We'll continue to get the answers to you. And even if Lauren runs out of time, we'll continue to get answers later from him, put it into the recap so all the questions get appropriate answers. One last thing I want to tell everybody about is we do have, and you'll notice on your screen, another webinar that is scheduled right now for mastering social media for big brands, and that's with our own Debbie Miller. Really, really good topic, really important, I think, right now for big brands to understand how their position is in social media. So I think it's going to be a really good topic, and it's going to be, again, Wednesday, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, and it's going to be on May 6th. Wednesday, May 6th, Debbie Miller, Mastering Social Media for Big Brands. And keep the questions coming, and we'll get you answers as quickly as possible. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much. I appreciated doing the webinar. It was a lot of fun. And what I would say, one extra thing, is that when we do our recap on SEJ, we're going to make sure that that recap has video content, slide share, links to tools, basically what is equivalent to a transcript of a blog post of this webinar, and that itself is going to be a great example of how to build a page with the best content ever.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.